The Dogman approached, holding something out to me in its paw. Dear Scary Stories NYC, I've been having the most terrible nightmares of my life since I was approached in the wild and handed something by a creepy, upright walking beast man with a canine head and body. I now wonder if I've cursed myself by accepting what he offered me. I'm going to try to explain this in as detailed a manner as I can manage, because I'm hoping someone out there will recognize what has been done to me and possibly give me a way to get out from under this curse. If you ask me what the curse entails, in honesty at this point, I can only list the bad dreams. They are of such a horrible nature, though, that they cause me to feel that they are leading to something darker and even more horrible happening to me or around me in my waking life as well. This is a story from Illinois, which I know sounds bizarre, but if you look at a map, the very famous Beast of Bray Road sightings happened only about a half-hour drive to the north of where the action took place for me and my buddy that set off my recurring nightmares. Now, this didn't start all that long ago. It was the beginning of autumn, when the air was just getting a little cold and crisp. I was out camping alone because my buddy Gerald had canceled on me at the last minute. Gerald lived in the town of Wonder Lake, which, as you might expect, is situated around a lake that shares the same name. I had arrived in town and slept over at his place because he was going to lead me on a fun camping adventure that next day. Instead, he told me that he woke up with a bad feeling about camping, and that he wanted to stay home or do something different instead. I made fun of him for being oversensitive, and I asked him for directions so that I could go camping alone. He urged me not to, but he didn't want to say why. When Gerald finally admitted that he had a bad dream the night before, I could not stop laughing at the guy. He was being ridiculous as far as I was concerned. According to him, the Dogman came to him in his dream. First, he looked like a naturalistic Dogman, a living animal that stood like a human but resembled a dog or a wolf. Then, after he had somehow gained control of Gerald, the Dogman changed to look like some kind of a devil, but not a natural living one. It was more like he seemed to become a half-living and half-totem or symbol somehow. I failed to see why any of this should ruin the camping that I had driven almost 100 miles to do with Gerald, and so he gave me some rough directions. There's a natural undeveloped area to the south of Wonder Lake that's a bit treacherous, but it can also be about the most beautiful place in the world, according to Gerald. The trouble is that it's also one of the relatively few heavily forested places in the southern part of the state, and so there were times of the year when, according to Gerald, the Dogman would come and take the place over. It would only be for a day or two at a time, not for a full season, but he refused to disobey his instincts and his dream, which he had decided was prophetic. I told him that he'd never know if it really was unless he came out camping with me, but his mind was made up. So I was just a short walk through some green areas south of this nice and fairly densely populated suburban town. But it felt almost immediately as if I had entered the Star Trek holodeck and was walking through a simulation from another planet. Gerald was right about it being beautiful, and even though parts of it were impenetrable, and other parts were wet or muddy, it all somehow felt very exotic to me. Even the bushes looked unique, and I found myself staring at leaves on plants, wondering why they didn't look familiar at all. I set up camp in a clearing in the woods, about the size of a baseball infield. The air smelled wonderful, and I couldn't believe that Gerald was missing all of this. So there is other nature out in these Illinois suburbs. Winding Creek Conservation Area is to the northwest, but far closer and to the south is the Boone Creek Conservation Area. I knew it was not that long a walk to get back to Gerald's house, and he told me he'd be up late, so I could come back any time if it got too scary for me. He asked me to try to call first, but warned that the Wi-Fi and cell service wasn't always very good down in that area. This was not an idle warning. I couldn't watch YouTube or even download podcasts over there, so I was forced to actually look around at nature while camping, the way the primitives of the 20th century used to do it. I was getting chilly and thinking about climbing in the sleeping bag inside the tent to warm up. I was told to only bring food I could eat raw, like nuts, because it probably wasn't legal to camp back there at all. You definitely didn't want a trail of smoke going up into the sky, giving your location away, in case there's anyone in charge of noticing these sort of things that was on duty that night. So I felt like I was just going to stand up and climb inside the tent when I saw eye shine coming from the woods. It looked to me like the yellowish-orangish glow of owl eyes, but they were far too low and close to the ground. Unless the owl was injured and on the ground, I thought. In that case, maybe it was looking at me to ask me for help. It was a stupid and ridiculous thought, but being alone in the woods south of Wonder Lake can get you thinking strange things. It was a little hard to see the creature through the smoke from the campfire. The smoke from the campfire? I had specifically not built a campfire. I felt increasingly disoriented. Was the fire something naturally occurring? Nothing was making sense inside my spinning brain. I must have been imagining something, but which parts were real? I took a cautious step toward the woods, where I saw those eyes. And to my great surprise, the two glowing orbs rose up from a foot or two off the ground to somewhere around 5'8" or 5'10". I could see then that I was looking at what seemed to be a wolf, but one that had risen as I watched, from a crouching position to an upright bipedal stance, same as my own. It was not a 9 or 12-foot giant as I hear people tell of, but it was really there, and to my horror, it started walking resolutely out of the brush and toward me. I've never felt so scared. I took its approach as a threat, obviously. The creature seemed to notice this, and abruptly slowed its pace. Then it tilted its head down, adopting a submissive posture, and held out one of its paws toward me. The paw was closed around something, and I could not see what. I could see that its paws were huge, though, and that its claws looked even longer than you would expect them to look. They were darker or silvery-colored opaque claws, nothing like those of any other dog I've ever encountered. I stood perfectly still, studying this figure. This was not a bear, not even a bear with mange. This was a figure with very little body fat, but also one that was healthy and strong. Its fur was healthy-looking enough, and had the build of a somewhat athletic young man, like a welterweight boxer, let's say. Not a weightlifter, but more of a swimmer's physique. The dogman wanted me to take whatever was in his large hand-like paw, and when I didn't, he even bent his knees a bit and brought himself another inch or two lower into an even humbler pose. He was doing his best to seem less frightening, and he was clearly displaying intelligence as well as an opposable thumb. I decided to take a chance, and I slowly and nervously reached out my open palm, facing up, ready to receive whatever it was that the dogman felt I needed to have. Seeing this, the creature turned his paw around to face down, moved it over my palm, and dropped something into my hand, obscuring it with his paw so that I could initially only feel it and not see it. This was something that had random sharp edges, but was not sharp all over. There was a feeling of wetness, and I looked down to see a small bird. I think it was a sparrow, or a former sparrow, as John Cleese might have phrased it. It wasn't moving anymore, but it was still leaking, all over my hand. I dropped it in disgust and wiped my hand on some dried grass nearby. The wolf was running away on all fours, looking just like an ordinary wolf when he did so. A bit large, but otherwise like a wolf. I threw dirt on the fire that I did not remember lighting. Then I climbed into the tent and the sleeping bag and zipped up. I couldn't sleep though, and eventually I gave up. I remember making a broken field run back to Gerald's house, jumping and squealing at every little sound I encountered along the way. I spent the rest of the night in there. In the morning, Gerald walked me back to collect my tent and stuff, which I just left where they were. I wanted to show him the dead bird, but I couldn't find where I dropped it. I wanted to point out the campfire that I had doused, but I couldn't see where that had been either. Gerald told me that if an animal likes you, it'll give you some prey it has killed. Like he said, he used to have a big female cat that would bring him half a bird, half a rat, things like that. She meant it as the ultimate show of respect, so maybe this werewolf meant the offering in the same way. Maybe Gerald suggested I should be happy about it, not frightened. I tried to accept what he was saying, but he had left one part out. I had rejected the offering, hadn't I? Even though I couldn't understand what was going on, I had a deep sense that things were about to get worse for me. The dreams have taken over my life since I'm having trouble functioning on so little sleep. I'm afraid to even lie down though, because the dreams are terrifying, and they all seem completely real when they're happening. The Dogman reveals himself to be the devil. His ears become horns. Sometimes he has horns, dog ears, and human ears as well, which looks so completely wrong that I want to scream in horror. It's like my own mind betrays me by catching me when I'm asleep and unable to look away, and then presenting me with everything I am most afraid of to stare me in the face. Maybe the only way to really explain it would be to say that it's my own personalized hell. I am so scared to go to sleep that I cannot even express it in words. Is this because that devil Dogman gave me that bird? Or is it because I rejected it? I'm a nervous wreck, and my life has become a living hell ever since. The Dogman approached, holding something out to me in its paw. I fought a Dogman. Mono. A dog mono. Dear Scary Stories NYC. I went to a private lodge owned by a friend of a friend up in northern Michigan where it gets cold in the winter. It's this like steam lodge kind of thing, you know? They got a fancy name for it, but basically you sit in a steam room, opening your pores, and then, like a crazy person, you go out in the icy snow. I think it'd probably kill half of the people listening to this, but men like me do this to make ourselves, even stronger. And one time when I exited the steam room for the icy tundra surrounding this remote lodge, I saw the challenger I had been waiting my entire life to encounter. There, standing in the snow in front of me, was a magnificent specimen of a North American upright walking canid, or dogman. It was the opposite of camouflaged, standing with dark black fur in the middle of a field of snow. Our eyes met, and thousands of years of evolution in each of us was finally going to be put to the test. Which species is the true ruler of Earth? Which predator is truly the top of the food chain? I aim to claim that crown for humanity, and so I charged out into the snow, wearing nothing but a towel, screaming my head off like Mel Gibson in the movie Braveheart. He was about the same size as me, and I'm 6'5". His body mass seemed much denser than any man I've ever battled, though. I knew that if I were to win, it would not likely be by using brute force, which is sort of my go-to tactic most of the time. I found myself in the rare situation of being the smaller opponent, and so it seemed smarter for me to try using Eastern martial arts approaches to the battle. I wanted to let him tire himself out a bit, and I wanted to lay back and look for weaknesses or wait for mistakes. It was the exact kind of fighting I normally curse at people for doing, but I wanted to beat this much heavier fighter who had claws that I didn't have. I would need to play defense, and I would need to hope he screwed up. The creature shifted to battling by swiping at me with his claws, trying to slice me into deli meat. I was managing to evade getting ripped open, but he literally sliced off some of my hair in one near miss. My plan to outlast the Dogman began to blow up in my face, or maybe I should say, freeze under my feet, because I reached my tolerance level for being out in the snow. The Dogman was still doing fine, but I no longer was. My towel accidentally dropped, and as I reached down to grab it, the Dogman reached down to chomp a nice big crunching bite into my left shoulder that I can still feel as I type this. Needless to say, I blacked out on the spot. I woke up in an ambulance with my buddy Sven, who was cursing me out. He was saying I was a macho loser and that I deserved to be left out in the snow. Also, he didn't care if I lived and stuff like that. But I mean, he was riding in the ambulance to the hospital with me, so I knew he didn't mean any of that. He was telling me that the Dogman bit into my collarbone and I might have to have surgery. He and the nurse were also babbling about other stuff that I had to worry about, but I kept trying to tell them that I felt okay. The nap I took after I got bit had really helped, and I felt much stronger. They told me that was crazy talk, and that I was still in shock, and things of that nature. I decided to humor them because I don't really get this much attention that often, you know? Anyway, we got to the hospital, and like I said, I was fine. I didn't need stitches, the wound had healed. I didn't have any broken bones. Sven was just being dramatic as usual. The Dogman did bite me, but I must have been frozen solid, so maybe I broke his teeth off in his mouth. Anyway, it took me a while to figure this all out, but that was not a Dogman that bit me after all. It was a werewolf. It had to have been. The reason I'm saying this is that now I myself am beginning to become someone or something like the beast that bit me. Each of the last 2 full moons, I've suffered from terrible headaches. And in the most recent one, I watched as hair, or maybe fur, grew out of my hands and arms right in front of my eyes. I expect it to worsen each month, and nothing I have tried so far has made it go away. My friend Sven laughs at me and mocks me for a fool. He says I brought the werewolf curse down on my own head, and I don't suppose I can argue with his assessment, can I? I chose the nobility of savage battle, and no matter what Sven says, I was and always will be the clear winner. Sooner or later, I'm gonna be able to fully transform, just like the beast who I fought with on that night. I'm gonna be able to be the king of the forest, the top of the food chain. I am in the process of becoming a werewolf. I'm gonna have the fiercest attributes of the animal world, with the highest and best qualities of the human race as well. I'm gonna be the ultimate warrior. Then, it will be my privilege to seek out candidates for werewolfism, just as I myself was sought out for the challenge that day, outside the steam room. None of my friends will know what it's like to smell the ground and know everyone who has walked there. None of my friends will be able to hear possible prey at a distance of up to 500 feet. None of my friends will ever be able to run as fast as a speeding pickup truck. And most of all, none of them will ever be able to truthfully say, I fought a dogman. Mono. A dog mono. Please join us in thanking Matt Hunt for being today's executive producer and making this episode possible. Matt is the kind of person with integrity that you don't really see too often any longer. He suggested that one of our thumbnail designs would make a good t-shirt. Then, when we put that design out as a t-shirt, he put his money where his mouth is, and he bought one. Matt Hunt, keeping the dream alive. For one more day, a man amongst men, to be sure. I think the one he ordered should be featured right under this video on the left, but if not, please check in the description and hopefully I'll have remembered to link to it there. Here to explain different ways you can help us stay online and the various rewards you can get in return is our international TV spokesmongrel, Henry Lee Dogman. Thank you. Thanks, Biggie. And thanks to all of you for watching this far. If you liked it, please click like. If you'd like to see more of our work, please subscribe. And also click that bell icon if you'd like to be notified when we put out a new episode. To become an executive producer, you can donate to us through the thanks button under each of our videos or through our paypal.me/PeterBernard209 page. To receive cool perks like secret uncensored Dogman episodes far too wild to ever run on this channel, you can become a YouTube channel member by clicking the join button or join our PayPal subscribers club at peterbernard.com. Joining either at the $3 a month level or above gets you access to our over 25 hours of secret uncensored Dogman stories available nowhere else. Do you have a scary story about Dogman or some other kind of high strangeness that happened to you? Let us know by emailing us at scarystoriesnyc@gmail.com or by leaving us a voicemail message at 804-LA-SCARY. You may need to call back on that when it cuts off after I think 3 minutes. And if you don't want to do any of that stuff, thank you for simply watching to the end. Good night, and have a scary tomorrow.
Come back for more scary stories.